Hello, I'm Gavin Syme.
And I'm Vivian Corrigan, and welcome to Perthshire Online TV. So how's the healthy lifestyle and bacon rolls going?
Well, there's no bacon rolls. There's no bacon rolls at all. And the healthy lifestyle is going exceptionally well. It's all cereal for breakfast, it's baked potato at lunchtime, and it's protein and lots of veggies in the evening. So it's going very well.
And what about the white wine consumption?
All I can say on the white wine consumption is that the bar takings are down everywhere, and that's on behalf of Elaine Christie and I.
Very good. And I heard there was a bit of a scary sight on the North Inch the other day.
Well,
you on your bike.
Yeah, I know. So if you see somebody wobbling around the North Inch on a bike, then it's me, and keep well clear till you see me going past, because I can walk and jog around, but I'm not too safe on that bike sometimes. So has it been a busy week?
It has been, and I had a lovely interview with DCC Gordon Scobie, who came in to chat about child internet security, something that's vital in this day and age. So that was really interesting, Gavin.
And you know, it's refreshing to see that that there's so much activity happening on that agenda within Tayside and specifically Perthshire, because it's not just a local agenda, it's a national agenda and it's a global agenda. We mentioned on one of our previous shows that we're always keen to hook up with any visiting celebrities as they visit Perth or as they're planning to visit Perth. And we've actually got an interview in this week's show with the adventurer Chris Bonington. We also hear from Heartland FM's Bruce Patterson. Bruce is in the studio chatting with us around the initiatives and improvements required on rural broadband.
And remember, we always love to hear from you, so please get in touch via the usual email, Facebook or Twitter. So as they say, Gavin, it's on with the show. As we know, the internet is a fantastic tool, but it does come with obvious risks. Now, many years ago, the policemen used to come around the schools and talk about the dangers of talking to strangers. But in today's modern society, strangers come in a different guise. Now, joining me is Deputy Chief Constable Gordon Scobie. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Hello.
Now, as I said, strangers do come in a different guise, and this is what you're concerned with, isn't it, as regards young people and children. Have a little word with us about that. What kind of problems do you face and see?
Well, you know, that issue affects us all, but, you know, in terms of this interview today, and particularly children and young people, you're right, you know, it would have been, you know, stranger danger, don't talk to strangers. The world has moved on. That's still an important message, but actually strangers now can come straight into the home, and often in a way that they are disguised. So a practical example of that would be if you have a 15-year-old child and they're on the internet chatting, are you confident that the individual they're chatting to is purporting to be a 15-year-old? Are they 15? Are they 25? Are they 55? If you don't know that individual, then there is a risk that actually the person you're talking to is not who they say they are. And so that is one of the risks.
It must be so difficult to try and police this, either as parents or as police officers, you know, because people can't hide who they are, can't they?
Absolutely. So the things we can do, you know, from the police point of view, but actually the real safety and the real way you manage that risk is through better education, both in terms of children and young people, but also parents. It's really crucial that parents understand what some of the risks are.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's why we're here to talk about this today.
Yeah, and often that is the problem, that parents don't understand or maybe haven't got a grasp of what these dangers are. Now, thinking about social networking, Facebook, all the kids are into it, aren't they? There's dangers there though, isn't there?
Yeah, there's probably three things I want to go over today. The first one would be, we've talked about friends, and you know, sometimes now children and young people have a very different view on what a friend is. So a friend to you and I would be somebody you would know, maybe known them for a long time, we know who they are, we know enough about them to judge what we would tell and what we wouldn't tell. Sometimes now children and young people have a different view of what a friend is. A friend on the internet can be something different. So it's really important that parents understand when they're talking about friends, particularly online, who are the individuals, what information is being shared. If that's personal information, really you only want to share that with people you do know and you trust. If you don't know who they are and it's not somebody you know you can trust, do not share any personal information that can come back to you, that can say who you are, where you live, anything at all that could help somebody locate you.
Yeah, and also it's photographs as well, isn't it? I mean, youngsters often put up all these photographs and maybe, you know, it shows things that they shouldn't really. Parents should know what's going on, shouldn't they?
Definitely. I think in that respect there's two issues. Privacy. So privacy, there's two angles to that. Firstly, you're right, people will post things, and I have to say adults do this as well.
Yeah.
So increasingly things like photographs that may seem like a good idea or seem funny at the time actually can come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
So, you know, what seemed like, you know, that...
A good idea.
Absolutely, yeah. And that stays on there for life.
That's right.
So
Once
that's
it's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing, settings on your, whether it's your iPhone or whatever device you're using, there are settings, privacy settings on the hardware that you need to be aware of. So make sure, for example, if you're using a smartphone, that has location on it. Now you can switch that off. Right. And the benefit of that would be, obviously, if you don't want people to know where you are, so where you're sending messages from, you need to make sure that's switched off on the phone. And equally with the software, so if it's Facebook, which is a good example, the privacy settings change regularly. So you need to be aware of how secure your settings are. And again, if you're a child or a young person, it's really important that you've got the maximum security on so you remain safe.
Yeah, because children are trusting, aren't they? And they don't really maybe think about these dangers the way we would as adults.
Absolutely. So I think it's really important, and this is my last point I'd want to just enforce, that parents quite often have the view that this has passed me by, I don't understand Facebook, I don't understand Twitter, actually this is something I don't want to get involved in. What I would say is, you don't have to use it, but I think when you've got children, if they're online, you need to understand what they're doing. You need to understand a bit about how it works, even if you're not going to use it, so that you're keeping your child or young person safe. And that's really, really important.
That's right. It is a parental responsibility, isn't it, to
Absolutely.
be involved.
Yeah.
And it's crucial.
It is crucial, because if I look at things like bullying, so when we were young, bullying tended to happen, you know, out in the playground.
Yes.
You could come home, you know, your home was where you were safe. It was your sanctuary. Now with smartphones, you know, with computers, bullying can continue right into the home.
Yeah.
So going up into the bedroom, for example, that used to be a safe haven, no longer. So parents need to be aware of the effects that can have. And I think just traditional parenting skills come in here as well. So as a parent, be aware of this new stuff, but also just look for the telltale signs, and you'll know your child well enough that if something's changed, what's behind that? And it may well be some online behaviour that's just changed. Yeah,
well, that's really interesting, and there's so many different facets to this that we could really talk all day about it. Now, there's an exciting event happening on the 1st of March in the cinema at Perth Playhouse. Tell us a bit about that.
That's been run by Perth and Kinross Council. There's some key partners getting involved. We've got some speakers talking about, you know, internet safety, how to keep yourself safe. But I think really importantly, for those parents or adults who are worried about not knowing enough, feel there's a knowledge gap, then there will be practical sessions there, one-to-ones where parents can get, you know, because we don't like knowing, we don't like admitting what we don't know. So you can do that in confidence on a one-to-one where you'll get practical advice that will help keep your child and young person safe. Well, that was very interesting. As you say, it is practical advice. That's what we all need as parents. So thank you for joining us today. You're very welcome. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
We're very lucky to have with us today on the telephone Sir Chris Bonington, famous explorer and mountaineer from his home in Cumbria. Now, as you know, Chris has recently visited the area as part of his lecture tour. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome, Chris, to the show.
Well, delighted to be on it.
And by the way, everybody, I did check that it was okay to call him Chris first, so I'm not being disrespectful. Chris, I've got loads of questions for you, so I've had to sort of bring them down to a reasonable level. You're definitely one of my childhood heroes. You've probably heard that many times before. Not that I wanted to climb mountains, but you inspired people with your indomitable spirit in so many ways. Who inspires you, and why do they inspire you?
Well, I think the starting to actually get into the mountains was actually a book by W.H. Poucher, who was a very, very good landscape photographer, really of the pre-war period. And I was born and brought up in Hampstead, went to school in Hampstead, London as well, and I'd never really been into the big mountains at all. And I was staying with my aunt in Wallasey, a very flat place.
Right.
And we went to see some friends, and they had this coffee table book on the table, which were pictures of the Scottish Highlands. And it just absolutely caught my imagination. And I thought, well, I'd love to get into those hills. But in actual fact, the hill I first went into was a schoolmate of mine at the age of 15. I hitchhiked up to Scotland, or rather up to Wales in the middle of winter, and we tried to climb Snowdon. And it was very snowy winter, we were avalanche off. But I was excited by it, and then I met some climbers in the youth hostel, and that's really where my direct interest started. So really, I can thank that book. In my early years of climbing there, the following summer I got actually up into the Highlands of Scotland and went climbing.
Right.
And it was a Scottish climber's book, W.H. Murray's Mountaineering in Scotland. And that really inspired, because something like Everest, that was completely beyond my reach, but
yes.
I could get up to those Scottish Highlands, and that book really, kept me going. It was my Bible for my early years of climbing.
So was Everest and the larger mountain ranges, was that always an ambition?
No. I think it came much, much later. I think I've always been interested in the things that I can actually know that I can actually get to and do. So my first drive in climbing was as a rock climber, climbing in the British Isles, in Wales and Scotland. And of course, this, remember, is back in the early 1950s, which was just in the aftermath of the Second World War.
Right.
And, travel was very difficult. My mum was a single parent, and, there was no question of being able to go abroad. And then I first went abroad when I'd actually, I joined the army, I went to Sandhurst, I was commissioned into the Royal Tank Regiment, and my posting was in Germany. And at that point, I could reach the Alps. And then my passion was to actually, go climbing in the Alps, and I started doing, hard climbs in the Alps. I suppose I was a good natural climber.
Right.
And that was really my first drive, or my second drive, and then the third one, the Himalayas, came, I suppose, fortuitously, in that I was invited on a services expedition to a mountain called Annapurna 2 in 1960. And that was my first trip to the Himalayas. And I was lucky enough to climb Annapurna 2. It was only just under 8,000 metres. But I was still more interested in alpine climbing.
Right.
And really, Everest only came onto the horizon in the 1970s when we climbed the south face of Annapurna, and the next huge challenge, of course, was the southwest face of Everest.
And I noticed from the history of that you made an attempt on the southwest face of Everest, not really expecting to succeed, didn't succeed, but learned an awful lot from that, which obviously led to you succeeding the next time you tried.
We hope, no. Well, when we set out, we definitely hoped to succeed.
Yeah.
And we did our level best to succeed. With hindsight, one could see that we had very little chances of success. We had to string the expedition together very quickly. We made quite a few mistakes. We started too late. Our gear wasn't quite up to it. But the important thing was, we learned from those mistakes. So that in 1975, with a bigger expedition, with more time to put it together, with much better gear and things like that, we were successful.
I'm delighted today to welcome Bruce Patterson to the show. Now, as well as you knowing Bruce from Heartland FM, Bruce is also involved in the Highland Perthshire Community Partnership, and he's popped in today to chat through some of the initiatives with regards to rural broadband. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Hello, Graham.
So, tell us a little bit about, first of all, the Highland Perthshire Community Partnership. What does that get involved in?
Well, Highland Perthshire Community Partnership is like it's an umbrella group for other groups and volunteer organisations in Highland Perthshire, and we're there to aid and help groups. We have all the community councils. There are 10 community councils in Highland Perthshire, and they're all members of HPCP, Highland Perthshire Community Partnership, and various other organisations and groups are as well, and we're there to help them. We don't have any money to give to them, but for instance, if they're needing help, perhaps setting up, needing a constitution, they're needing to know how to run a committee, they want information about how to follow through a process or whatever, we're there to help them, we'll do that. We're also there to stop groups, or to try and stop groups duplicating what other groups are doing and wasting resources. Don't try and do this. There's a fellow 5 miles down the road doing it. Go and have a word with him, join together, and you're a more powerful group.
Fantastic.
And one of the things that we're looking at, as you mentioned, was the poor provision of broadband in Highland Perthshire and rural areas.
So what's been done up until now, and what would you like to see moving forward? Is there a call to action?
Well, what we're doing at the moment, we've had a number of surveys in the past. We've had a look at various possibilities of what we can do. Satellite provision being one, but it's never always going to work in all the areas. Sending it by line of sight, well, that's fine, but we stay in a lumpy, bendy area, so that doesn't work neither. So really, we're going to have to just get everything upgraded somehow. So what we're trying to do, there will be money coming forward from central government and from Edinburgh as well to improve the provision of broadband throughout 90% of Scotland. So what we want to make sure is that we're not in that 10% that perhaps could be missed out. So we're looking for people to test their broadband speed. You can do this very easily by going to mybroadbandspeed.co.uk.
Right. Okay.
That'll bring you it's very simple to work, just press a button. That'll bring up 2 speeds for you, an upload and a download speed. Send that to me along with your postcode, and we can make a postcodal map. Now we know where the poor areas are through anecdotal evidence, but by having this as hard fact evidence, then it kind of backs everything up.
Yeah, of course.
And if you just send it to brucehpcp@hotmail.co.uk, then that'll get to me, and we can put it together with all the others that we have. It's looked on. Some of the arguments people are saying, well, it's one of the prices you pay for staying in the country. But it shouldn't necessarily be that.
Because there's quite a lot of impact to it. You think about it from a business perspective alone. You think about it from a social perspective, how it hampers people with regards in a work environment. Or I suppose these days it's, years ago you used to have to, when you were a certain age at school, you had to make sure that you had the certain trendy jacket on. These days there's an assumption that when you go home at night that you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's that old argument. A long time ago they had that social argument, is TV a luxury? And no, it's not. Well, now the argument is broadband a luxury? No, it's not. We've embraced it so tightly in the UK that not to have it is part of social exclusion. I mean, you go home at night and you go back to school the next day, have you seen this on broadband? No. Did you see that on YouTube? No. Did you see that? Have you seen that video? No, I haven't. So I mean, there is that kind of social exclusion. It's also a very handy tool for education, for research when you're doing homework, even for applying for jobs, for downloading. We don't have shopping in many areas, and in rural areas. It means a trek to the supermarket. Even in rural large conurbations, people will still do their online shopping, and the man in the van comes and delivers it to you. If you can't get access to that, you've still got to drive to the shop. Now, your petrol's more expensive, your distance is further, so it's just adding and adding and adding to the costs. You can't buy cheap holidays, all that kind of stuff.
And the reverse, a lot of business people now, small businesses, they're starting up maybe in their spare time or in their part time, or they're looking for an area that's more affordable to live rather than the town centre. And to be honest, you kind of assume that you're going to be able to update your internet, you're going to be able to use Facebook and things for free marketing of your business. So it kind of hampers from an economic development perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, simple things. a lot of agricultural returns, farm returns, are now done online. They'll send you out all these forms to fill in, and that's fine. You fill them in, you send them back. Some people I've spoken to, it takes so long. The documents are so big and so heavy, it gets halfway down, it won't download the rest.
Yeah.
So then they have to print them off, then fill them in by hand, then drive with them back to where it is to be returned to.
Yeah.
Now you're talking, that's perhaps a day's work to do all of that. Whereas if you can do it online, then it can be done in a couple of hours and that's it gone, you have to worry about it anymore. So there's all that kind of stuff. That people will, you know, a lot of people work from home, the working time is very flexible, so you can quite easily go away on Thursday night for a long weekend, you don't have to go back till Monday afternoon. As long as you can take your laptop with you, you can do 2 or 3 hours work whilst you're away, and that's fine. If you don't have broadband provision in the place that you're going to, then you'll say, well, no, actually, we'll no go there. Book somewhere else. We'll go away, but no go there. So people who are relying on this kind of trade, you know, again, are missing out.
It is, because I mean, I was interested. I was actually just watching something on a programme yesterday, and it was a psychiatrist. They were talking about almost the you know, the huge use these days of social media, and how people are actually, you know, they've got to be using it. If you're not using your Facebook or you're something X hours a day, then they almost feel like they've got withdrawal symptoms. You know, it's a crazy environment we're living in to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, we have. I mean, we're not looking for that kind of depth. We're only looking for something that's usable. There are some areas even in, I think it's 7 in Perthshire alone, which these are substations, which are sub-exchanges, which are capped by BT at 0.5 of a meg. Now that's all you're ever going to get. The last time I was speaking to them, they had no intentions of upgrading these. So that means that you're stuck with that. That's as good as it's ever going to get.
And what is it in some other areas?
Well, I know that in my own one in Centre for Walkery, I can get 6.5 to 7, which is, people just dream of that. In some areas, they dream of 1 megabyte in some areas. But when you're talking, and there are areas, I mean, BT have been very good recently, and the Perth's getting upgraded, and Perth, I think Crieff, Kinross, Blair Gowrie, and there's one more I can't remember, are all getting upgraded. Brilliant. They're going to be getting up to 20 megabytes. Now that's tremendous. All that's really going to do to the rural areas is create a bigger disparity, just widen the gap. It doesn't really help the rural areas, so we have to ensure that the rural areas have that. There are an awful lot of people who want to work from home these days, so tremendous, you know, that's really good. But if you need to use your computer to work from home, well, you're not going to go and live in a rural area. If we can provide that, then it may be perhaps a step to repopulating rural areas where we we've got a chance of keeping the buses running, keeping the school open, you know, keeping the shop open, keeping the local pub there. But if we don't have any of these services and people are forced to move away because they need them for work, then again, it's, you know, rural areas are going to become more rural, and people are just going to move away.
So, call to action, Bruce, and closing up, who should they get in touch with?
What should they do? If you want to test your broadband speed, mybroadbandspeed.co.uk, or if you can't remember that, just Google it, you'll find it, and send it to me, my email address, which is brucehpcp@hotmail.co.uk. I need your upload speed, your download speed, and your postcode.
Great. Bruce, listen, thanks for popping into the studio.
Thank you.
And remember that email address.
So, tell me, how does leadership of an expedition differ now from when you climbed Everest? Are there differences? Are leadership qualities or the way people lead an expedition different now from then?
No, leadership qualities, I think, are both universal and eternal. In other words, a person who is an effective leader, he needs to be able to inspire, he needs to be able to involve the people around him, he needs to care for the people that he's leading, and so on. So there's never change. What has changed, though, is the nature of expeditions. Back in the 1970s, climbing these big and very difficult faces, you couldn't think of being able to do them by any other means than having a siege-style expedition where you establish a series of camps up the mountain. If it's Everest, you're certainly using oxygen, you're using a lot of Sherpas and everything else. Right. And that's where, yes, the leader of that and they're climbing big Himalayan walls, but they're climbing them in very small teams, alpine style. And alpine style means that you actually pack a rucksack at the bottom of the climb, and you keep going till you get to the top. So here, it isn't really a matter of leadership, because there'll be, I mean, it might be a solo climb, it might be 2 people, it might be 4 people, but they're climbing together as a group, as a cooperative, if you like.
Right.
And so that it's really a question of individual skill, determination, and everything else, and judgment. So it's a different kind of form of climbing.
So, coming up to the 100th anniversary of Scott's trek to the South Pole, which unfortunately was pipped to the post at, how much of an inspiration was someone like Scott to you?
Well, I think there are question marks about Scott's leadership, quite frankly.
Yes, I'd agree with you.
And I think it's a very interesting thing, looking at Amundsen and looking at Scott. Amundsen had actually analysed what was needed to reach the pole fast and effectively and quickly, and was very, very attuned to that environment. He was using dog teams. He had no hesitation at all in, as the more of the food was eaten, you needed less dogs. You slaughtered the dog, and the dogs ate the dog.
Yeah.
Sounds ruthless, sounds cruel, but that got them to the pole and got them back alive.
Exactly, because you're continually producing
Scott,
food.
on the other hand, I think he was an admirable man, but I think he was caught in the the attitudes that the British had back in the early part of the 20th century. And it was quite a class-ridden society.
Yes.
There was very much, even on that expedition, kind of before the mast and who were the officers. And they employed the wrong tactics to give them a chance to get to the South Pole quicker than the others, and of course to get back alive.
And of course trying different technology at the time as well, with the motorised engines and the ponies and the dogs. They didn't really fix on one thing, whereas Amundsen tried and tested.
He was focusing on using something that he knew would work, and then really practicing at it, and had much, much more experience and practice in actually using those things. I mean, I think the great British leader, if you like, in polar exploration is Shackleton, and I think Shackleton, was an amazing, wonderful leader. And I think he, in every kind of way.
So, talking about people that you regard highly, are there any explorers currently that you regard very highly?
Well, no. In my kind of climbing experience, I've been lucky in having, I suppose, over the years, some wonderful mentors. For instance, when I started climbing in the South, Hamish McInnes, who of course lives in Glencoe, has devoted his life not just to climbing, but also to mountain rescue, and also to the design, particularly, of kind of mountain rescue stretcher sledges, which are used all over the world. Hamish is about, 5-6 years younger than me, and I climbed with him first in 1954, and he was on 2 of my Everest expeditions in 72 and 75. But I learned an immense amount from him. Another very much of a mentor in how to run and lead an expedition was John Hunt, who of course led the 1953 Everest expedition and provided an absolute blueprint about both how you lead from a term of man management, human relations, and also he realised the importance of really good logistics from his military background. So I learnt an immense amount from him. And then in later years, I've come to know Reinhold Messner quite well.
Yes.
And he, if you like, is the absolute, he was the leader of modern extreme climbing, basically of, alpine-style climbing. A lot of the routes he did was either solo or with just one other person. And he is probably, in what he's done and achieved, the greatest climber of all times, and I've got a profound admiration for him.
I have to say, coming from Sir Chris Bonington, that's quite an accolade. Moving on, just a few things that occurred to me. Some of the lunar astronauts have expressed having had, and not necessarily religious, but spiritual experiences when they've done something really outstanding. Did you have any experience of anything that was particularly spiritual on any of your expeditions? And if so, how would you express that?
I'm not sure about spiritual. I mean, I'm an agnostic.
Yeah.
But I certainly had profoundly emotional experiences on expeditions, and I think just being in fantastic mountain country, be it in the Lake District, be in the wonderful wilds of the Highlands, because you don't have to go abroad to have wonderful mountain experience.
No, that's true, you don't.
Or, indeed, being in the Alps and being in the Himalayas and times when, yes, you have a sense of huge emotion, which is both of wonder at the surroundings around you, and also of, if you like, affection, respect, gratitude to the people with whom you're climbing.
Did anything on a mountain ever frighten you?
Oh yes, frequently. I mean, never ever go climbing with someone who's never frightened. I mean, they're going to get you killed.
Yes.
Being afraid is a very clear kind of signal. So this is dangerous. Should I be here? And you've then got to, if you like, assess the risk and decide, well, should I be here? And shall I push on, or is this time to turn back? And you make your decision accordingly. So no, fear is a very natural, sensible and important kind of signal, but you then need to know how to control fear. And if you're in the middle of a kind of a major crisis, well, then you don't have time to be afraid, because you're too busy getting out of it.
What's your most precious memory?
I think, I suppose, the most precious of all is the arrival of my children.
Yes.
But, which I suppose is a bit obvious, but in climbing terms, I remember actually when we'd actually we'd put Doug and Dougal into the top camp on Everest, the south of Everest in 1975, and the whole team had worked incredibly well together to actually get them to that position, and the weather was right, the time was right, and we knew that they had, a very good chance of success. And I remember just sitting down in the snow, going down the 6 ropes, and I was by myself, and just having a profound sense of contentment that we really, we'd done this, and there was a kind of huge sense of gratitude to the team that I had with me. Doug and Dougal, who were going to make that push for the summit, but everyone else who'd actually made it possible for them to have that opportunity.
So, Chris, I've only got one more question for you, because I know your time is precious, and thank you so much for talking to us. But on doing the research for this, I had one of those spine-tingling moments, because I looked up your Desert Island discs, and the one piece of music that you didn't want to be without actually is the one piece of music that I wouldn't want to be without, which is that wonderful harp concerto by Handel. Is that still your favourite piece of music, and if so, why?
It is. It's a wonderful kind of, it just strikes, it just goes to your heart, basically, doesn't it? And there's a kind of, there's a beauty about it, a touch of sadness, and it's something that's very special. I think it's a wonderful piece of music.
Absolutely. Well, Sir Chris Bonington, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. What we're going to do now is we're going to show everybody a slideshow of some of your great achievements, and it's going to be accompanied by your favourite Desert Island discs. Thank you ever so much for talking to me.
Hi, I'm Francesca Webster, the community reporter for PerthshireOnlineTV, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Bruce Hotchkeis. How are you getting on, Bruce?
Good. How are you doing?
It's fantastic to see you.
Excellent.
I've missed you.
Been a long time since I saw you. Funnily enough, I haven't changed my T-shirt.
I've missed seeing you every kind of Friday night in our judging with our judging hats on. But today we're going to talk about the Scottish New Music Awards.
Right.
So.
What would you like to know?
Everything. You started the things up.
Yeah, the Scottish New Music Awards are in their second year, and we hold them the first weekend in September. So this year we're on September 2nd, and it's being held at the Classic Grand in Glasgow. But obviously before the actual event there's an awful lot of preparation that goes into it. Certainly collecting all the submissions before we go out for nomination, and then we hit judging panels and online polls and all sorts of stuff. I mean, our tagline is by musicians for musicians, so we try and get the music community in Scotland as involved as we can, still keeping everything fair and square. So yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty good show. We've got the first announced performer is Kamehameha, who won the Clearwater Battle of the Bands that you and I judged at.
Yes, and tell me, I mean, the awards, this is going to be year 2. So
yes.
Last year was fantastic. It was a really big turnout, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was,
yes.
Actually, tell me who were your kind of main winners last year? I saw that Sandy Tom was on.
Sure. Yeah. You picked the one that people had something to say about.
What did they have to say?
Well,
yeah.
No. I mean, first off, the award show is divided into 2. We have 40 awards that we give out.
Right.
Half of those are music related. Jazz Blues Album of the Year, Urban Recording of the Year, Artist of the Year. The other half are industry related. So it's like Radio Station of the Year, Media Person, Recording Engineer, Rehearsal Studio, all of that kind of stuff. you know, the stuff that the general public is not overly concerned about. Now, with the music side of things, our criteria in order to be eligible to be awarded is A, you need to be Scottish.
Yeah.
B, you need to have released material that is available to the public within the judging time frame. And third, you cannot be signed to a major label.
Right.
Now, Dear Sandy, who everyone's heard of and all of that, was in fact eligible because she had been dropped by Sony.
Okay.
So she
I'd
was...
better just cut in here. For people who don't know who Sandy Tom is, she was a punk rocker with flowers in her hair.
Yes, yes.
Were you ever a punk rocker with hair?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
ago?
I wasn't a punk rocker. I was the Bon Jovi, you know, with the tooth earring and the white biker's jacket, and yeah, no, it was a scare. I'll send you a picture.
Okay.
It was scary.
But she was dropped by Sony, so technically she wasn't signed.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, she's out on her own independent label. So she was eligible for the awards. We also had guys like, you know, David Carey, who is, in my opinion, he's Scotland's answer to Johnny Cash. He is absolutely incredible. But some of the criticism was raised, you know, David Carey's 47 years old. How is that new? And it was sort of like, come on, guys, you want to start picking. It's new music, not new artist.
Right,
awards.
okay, because I saw that Dougie MacLean, our very own Dougie MacLean,
yes,
he was up for an award last year, was he not?
Yes, yeah, and he, well, Dougie...
Not saying that Dougie MacLean is old.
No, no,
He's
no.
older.
Yeah, but Dougie MacLean won album cover of the year. But no, he was up for a couple of awards. I think he was up for Artist of the Year and certainly, you know, Folk Recording of the Year or something. Once again, when it comes down to the judging panel, for the music awards, there's about 15 industry professionals, and they all get together at a rehearsal studio in Glasgow, and I sit there and play all of the tracks that have been nominated. No one knows who the artist is, no one knows what the song title is. It's just, here's a track in this category, what do you think of it? And they can judge on a million different things.
And I asked you at the beginning, could I conceal the fact that I have been asked formally to be a judge? And you said yes, but you're going to get inundated with music. I want that, because I do a drive time show, so I'm happy for anyone to come up and say hello. And
yeah, I said, you're going to be a judge, and if you announce it, I'm going to be inundated with music.
Oh, really? Well, that's what you want.
Yeah, you're going to be inundated with people going, vote for me, vote for me. But as I said, it is totally... No, none of the musicians or artists involved know who the judges are. None of the judges know who the musician is. However, we did have one judge come up to us last year and he goes, I really enjoyed tonight. It's amazing the new music that's out there. But that track sounded like Sandy Tom. That was awesome. And of course we went away going, well, yeah, it was Sandy Tom.
Excellent. Oh, well, we really need to kind of push Perthshire, because you said you've not had many applications yet from and nominations. So really, people need to get in touch with you. And I think the website's going to be shortly on the screen.
Yeah.
It's scotmusicawards.co.uk. And you really need to get, you know, a bigger kind of inclusion of these areas, don't you? Because I can imagine Glasgow's a real hotspot for new music.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger the pool of music that there is to judge from, the more defined it's going to be of Scotland, you know, and the more areas the artists are coming in from. I think that last year there was no issue whatsoever. I mean, we had artists coming down from the Orkneys, the Shetlands. We had artists coming from all over the place. We had one guy who was Scottish but was living in Massachusetts, who was prepared to come over for the show. At which point we said, look, mate, really, unless you've got into, you know, it's There's a
question. You were in Canada for a long time.
Oh, here we go.
You were in a band and you've got a Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
And a leather jacket.
Yeah.
And if
And a
you'd
Jeep.
been and a Jeep. No. And if you'd been approached or if you'd heard about these awards when you were in Canada, would you have taken part in them? Would you have come home?
All over them, like whatever things
Really?
are all over other things. Yeah. I mean, basically, I mean, I don't think an originator. The whole model of the Scottish New Music Awards has been completely plonked and taken out from an award show that I was involved in Canada, which was called the Hamilton Music Awards. And it was basically about promoting a scene. And I think that when I moved over here from Scotland, from Canada, I was very much involved in the music scene in Canada, which is a scene. It doesn't matter if you're a heavy metal guy, a punk guy, a flautist or whatever, you know, you all get along. When I came over here, if there was a Scottish scene, I couldn't find it.
Really?
And there's a lot of sort of, well, there's the Glasgow Rockers, or there's the Edinburgh this, or the Perth that, or the Aberdeen the other, and, you know, they all sit in their little internet forums, you know, chucking stuff at each other. And so I thought, why not give it a go?
That's it. I find, I mean, personally, doing the drive time show on Heartland FM, I absolutely love it. But, you know, you say to people, gosh, you know, we cover a huge area now, you know, we're online as well. And I'll have people maybe from Glasgow approaching me. But Perthshire itself, I don't have a huge number unless they're doing something like a battle of the bands, they want to have an extra promotion. But yeah, there's not a scene as such. You know, I don't go to gigs and see people I've seen at another gig. It really is quite, you know.
No, and I think, you know, I've gotten in trouble on our website and on our Facebook and all of those sort of things because unfortunately I'm the sort of guy that calls it how I see it. It's not necessarily correct, or the point can be argued, but it's how I see it. And a lot of the groups or scenes that proclaim to be groups or scenes are not, they're cliques. And if you don't fit in with their, you know, criteria, then you're not allowed in. And if you try and push your way in, you're seen as a bully. You're just supposed to sit there and go, boo-hoo, I'm not allowed in. And what this is about is there is none of that. I don't care if you're, you know, Eric from Metal Tech blasting out your industrial music, you know, or if you're the guys from Skerryvore playing your fiddles and bagpipes. You can still have a laugh, have a get-together, share a beer or a dram or whatever you call them here. And the Scottish New Music Awards, it's an industry night to do that.
Excellent. I can't wait for it. I really can't wait for it. And you said that I can go into the VIP area because I'm a judge. That's going to be the most exciting thing I've ever done. I'm really excited.
Unfortunately, with my mouth, there's going to be more people in the VIP area than in the actual ceremony. But
I should mention as well that you're sponsored by Jägermeister and Marshall, which is all of the kind of amps and guitars.
Yes, yeah.
Apparently, there might be some free guitars rolling about.
For me? No. Well, who knows? It's early days yet. We're talking to a lot of people. We do go out live on Celtic Music Radio, and there's vintage guitars are on board with us. John Hornby Skews, who are a distributor of a lot of musical instruments, are on. There is a lot of support from the music community for what we're doing. Excellent. So that's what we're happy for. Good
stuff. Well, once again, any nominations to you at scotmusicawards.co.uk, and I can't wait to come up and judge.
And I want to hear your stuff. Come on, get it to me.
Thank you, Bruce.
No sweat.
Well, thank you as always for joining us this week.
And thank you for your support in watching Perthshire Online TV. We always want to hear from you. We want to hear your news. We want to hear about your events. We want to hear about your interesting stories. So please contact us on the normal channels. You can email us at info@perthshireonline.co.uk. You can Facebook us on the Perthshire Online page, or you can follow us and communicate with us on Twitter at PerthshireOn. Until next week.